Hey, this is Six Path Weeb, welcoming you to my YouTube channel. Today's topic is a dark and intriguing what-if scenario. What if Naruko returned from the future and destroyed Konoha? Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The content on this channel is created purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, let's dive into this fanfic. Subscribers. Naruko looked around the small village she and her mentor had just entered. Like many places in the Fire Country, the buildings were made from a mix of wood and brick, with flat rooftops and neat, square shapes. Shops lined the streets, their windows filled with colorful goods, and people wandered past them with curious eyes and cheerful chatter. It had only been about a week since Naruko had set out on this journey, yet she had already seen so much. So what are we going to do here, Uro-senin? Naruko asked, glancing up at the tall man beside her. Jiraiya folded his arms and gave her a look that was more tired than stern. What have I told you about respecting your elders? Naruko gave a small shrug, her golden hair swaying lightly. I'll show more respect when you start acting more like a teacher. Jiraiya let out a long sigh, but there was a hint of a smile hiding behind it. He had noticed something about Naruko lately. She was quieter than before, more thoughtful. The bright, energetic girl who once filled every moment with laughter now spent more time observing the world around her. Well, he said at last, I have to meet someone here. After that, we'll begin your training properly. Naruko nodded. All right. As Jiraiya walked off, Naruko wandered through the village streets. She wasn't really paying attention to where she was going. Her thoughts were busy, turning over everything she had learned, and everything she still needed to learn. She realized that in the past, she hadn't always taken her training seriously. She had loved making people laugh and getting attention, but now she understood that becoming a strong and kind ninja meant putting in real effort. She wanted to grow, not just stronger, but wiser too. Eventually, she stopped in front of a clothing shop. She glanced down at her bright orange outfit. It had been her companion for a long time, but now she felt ready for a change. Inside, the shop was filled with neatly arranged clothes and tools. Naruko walked slowly through the aisles, choosing sturdy dark blue pants with plenty of pockets, along with shirts in calm, deep colors. She picked out gloves and boots too, everything she needed to feel prepared for her journey ahead. At the counter, she carefully counted her money and paid. She had learned to be mindful of what she spent, and even though this was a big purchase, she knew it was important. After changing into her new clothes, Naruko looked at herself in the mirror. She smiled softly. She looked different, but more importantly, she felt different. Outside, she created a shadow clone and asked it to find Jiraiya while she searched for something to eat. Before long, she found a small food stand and ordered a warm bowl of rice topped with savory beef. As she ate, something surprising happened. Memories from her shadow clone suddenly appeared in her mind. She blinked in amazement. It felt as if she had been in two places at once. When Jiraiya finally joined her, she shared what she had discovered. So you figured it out, he said with a proud nod. Shadow clones can share what they learn with you when they disappear. Naruko's eyes lit up. Then, I could use them to train faster, right? Jiraiya stroked his chin thoughtfully. Yes, you could. With your energy, you might learn in days what others take months to master. But you'll need to be careful. It can be tiring, and you must listen to your body. Naruko nodded, taking his words seriously. That evening, as the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink, Naruko felt a quiet determination grow within her. She wasn't just traveling anymore, she was learning, changing, and becoming the person she wanted to be. Tomorrow would be the start of her true training, and for the first time in a while, she felt ready. With a hopeful heart, Naruko finished her meal, already imagining all the wonderful things she would learn next. 1 month later. Naruko grunted softly as she pushed herself up from another set of push-ups, her golden ponytail swaying with each movement. She had been training for nearly an hour, and though her arms trembled slightly, her determination did not fade. It had been a month since she had learned the cage bunshine technique, and her progress had surprised even her. Every day, Naruko created nearly 200 shadow clones. Half of them practiced the graceful and swift movements of a special taijutsu style Jiraiya was teaching her, called Haming Tori no Ken, the hummingbird style. Unlike heavy or forceful techniques, this style focused on speed, balance, and gentle precision, like a hummingbird darting from flower to flower. The goal was not to harm, but to strike with careful accuracy and control. The other half of her clones worked on chakra control, which was still her most challenging area. They balanced small objects on their fingers while walking across the surface of water, concentrating deeply to keep everything steady. Some even carried small stones attached to their arms and legs, learning to move without losing balance. Naruko hoped that by the end of her journey, she would have control strong enough to match even the most disciplined shinobi. Meanwhile, the real Naruko focused on strengthening her body. Each morning, she followed a demanding routine inspired by her friend Rock Lee. She ran long distances, practiced hundreds of exercises, and challenged herself to improve a little more each day. To her, it was not just about becoming stronger, it was about proving to herself that she could grow. A short distance away, Jiraiya watched quietly, his expression thoughtful. He admired Naruko's dedication, but he also noticed how she rarely rested. She trained from sunrise to sunset, pausing only to eat and sleep, and even then, she did not sleep as much as she should. "Naruko!" Jiraiya called out. "Take a break and come here." Naruko finished her movement and walked over, brushing a bit of dust from her hands. "What is it, Jiraiya-sensei?" Jiraiya crossed his arms. "I want to know what's been bothering you." Naruko blinked, then looked away. "I'm fine, sensei." Jiraiya shook his head gently. "You've been quieter than usual. You've been working hard, but something is weighing on your mind. You can tell me." Naruko hesitated. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she slowly sat down, her shoulders relaxing just a little. "I've been thinking," she began softly, "about how much I missed before. When I was younger, no one really taught me the way they should have. I had to figure things out on my own. Even at the academy, I didn't always learn the right things." She paused, tracing a small line in the dirt with her finger. "I stopped trying for a while. I just wanted people to notice me." She looked up, her blue eyes steady now. "But I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to learn properly. I want to grow stronger, not just in skill, but in heart too." Jiraiya listened carefully, then gave a small, understanding nod. "That makes sense. Wanting to improve is a good thing. But even the strongest shinobi need rest. Growth doesn't come only from pushing harder, it also comes from knowing when to pause." Naruko considered his words, then gave a small smile. "I know. I just don't want to fall behind again." "You won't," Jiraiya said kindly. "You've already come so far. What matters is that you keep moving forward, one step at a time." Naruko stood up, her energy returning, but now with a calmer focus. "Thank you, sensei." Jiraiya smiled. "Now go on, but remember, balance is part of training too." Naruko nodded and returned to her spot. This time, as she resumed her exercises, her movements were steady and thoughtful. She was not just chasing strength anymore, she was learning how to grow wisely. And under the open sky, with each step and each breath, Naruko moved closer to becoming the kind of ninja she truly wanted to be. As soon as Naruto Uzumaki, now known as Naruko, entered the next town alongside Jiraiya, the Toad Sage immediately turned to her. "Listen, I'm going to find one of my contacts here so I can gather some information," he said. "You can wander around, just stay out of trouble, got it?" Naruko crossed her arms and gave him a playful look. "I'm not you, Uro-sensei." Jiraiya sighed, though there was a hint of amusement in his expression. Ever since Naruko had started respecting him as a teacher, she had insisted on calling him sensei, but she had also stubbornly kept the Uro part, just to remind him not to get too full of himself. "I'll be fine," Naruko continued cheerfully. "I'll look for some ramen and maybe do a little training afterward." "Whatever, brat," Jiraiya replied, already hurrying off. Naruko watched him go, raising an eyebrow. After traveling with him for a month, she had a very good idea where he was headed. "Some contact," she muttered to herself, shaking her head as she started walking through the town. At first, she didn't pay much attention to the buildings. To her, many towns in the Land of Fire looked similar. Instead, she found herself watching the people. It still felt new, almost surprising, to see strangers smiling at her. Back in the village, she hadn't always been treated kindly, so each friendly glance felt like a small, warm light. She returned a few smiles, a little shyly at first, but more naturally as she continued. Then she noticed something else. Groups of girls around her age passed by, and when Naruko smiled at them, they reacted in a way she didn't quite understand. Some blushed, others whispered to each other, and many of them giggled softly while glancing in her direction. Naruko blinked. "Huh?" She scratched the back of her head, confused. She didn't have much experience talking with other girls outside of her teammates, and this kind of reaction was completely new to her. "Well, that's different," she murmured. Still puzzled, she continued her search for ramen. After walking for a while, she finally found a cozy-looking stand and happily took a seat. The chef turned around. "What'll you have, kid?" Naruko studied the menu with great seriousness. I'll have 5 bowls of miso ramen, 4 chicken ramen, and 2 beef ramen to start." The chef blinked in surprise. "Are you sure you can eat all that?" Naruko gave him a confident grin. "Of course. I wouldn't order it if I couldn't finish it." The chef shrugged with a chuckle and got to work. Some time later, after many empty bowls had been stacked high, Naruko stepped out of the ramen stand with a satisfied smile and a noticeably lighter wallet. "That was amazing," she said happily, stretching her arms. "Totally worth it." She resumed her walk, thinking about finding a quiet place to train. Along the way, she noticed the same curious looks from people, especially from girls her age. It made her feel oddly proud. But also a little nervous. Why did they keep looking at me like that? She wondered aloud. She paused at a shop window, peering inside. Before she could move on, she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Turning around, Naruko found herself face to face with a girl about her age. The girl had long light brown hair, bright green eyes, and a friendly smile. Her cheeks were slightly pink, just like the others Naruko had noticed earlier. Naruko hesitated, suddenly unsure what to say. She remembered how loud she could be sometimes and decided to speak a bit more softly. "Can I help you?" From behind the girl, Naruko could hear soft giggles. She glanced past her and saw a small group of girls watching them with curious expressions. For some reason, Naruko's instincts tingled. Not in a dangerous way, but in a something unexpected is about to happen kind of way. The girl smiled warmly. "Actually, my friends and I were wondering. Would you like to go shopping with us?" Naruko blinked. She opened her mouth. Then closed it. Then blinked again. "No one's ever asked me that before," she thought, her mind racing. "Shopping?" she repeated out loud, just to make sure she heard correctly. The girl giggled softly. "Yes, shopping with us." Naruko felt her cheeks grow warm. The giggling behind the girl grew louder, but it didn't feel mean, it felt light and friendly, like a group of people sharing a fun moment. She shifted her weight, thinking carefully. Part of her wanted to run off and hide, this was all so new. But another part of her felt something brighter, excitement. She had spent so much time training and going on missions. She had never really just spent time with people her age like this. Slowly, a wide smile spread across her face. "Sure," Naruko said brightly. "I'd love to." The group of girls lit up with excitement. And as Naruko joined them, she had no idea that this simple invitation would lead to one of the most fun, and surprising, afternoons she had ever experienced. Naruko was not quite sure how her day had turned into such a whirlwind, but before she knew it, she was being gently tugged along by a cheerful group of girls from one shop to another across the village. They weren't really buying anything. Instead, they seemed determined to try on all sorts of outfits and ask Naruko what she thought. One by one, they would step out in colorful dresses, cozy sweaters, or playful accessories, twirling around and asking, "What do you think?" Or "Does this look good?" Naruko, who had never been asked for fashion advice in her life, could only blink in surprise. Her cheeks turned pink as she tried to respond. Sometimes she managed a small nod or a quiet "it looks nice," but most of the time, her words got tangled up before they could even leave her mouth. The girls didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, they giggled and smiled even more, calling her sweet and asking her all sorts of questions about her favorite colors and styles. Naruko scratched the back of her head, unsure how she had ended up in this situation, but she couldn't help smiling a little too. Just then, a sudden commotion caught everyone's attention. A swirl of dust appeared down the street, growing closer and closer. Naruko and the girls paused to watch as someone dashed past in a great hurry. It was her teacher, Jiraiya, running as fast as he could, looking unusually flustered. A group of villagers followed behind him, calling out for him to stop and help explain something he had apparently misunderstood. Naruko blinked, then let out a small laugh. "Ah! I think my teacher might need some help," she said, gently freeing herself from the girl's grasp. "I'm really sorry, but I should go check on her." With a quick wave and a grateful smile, Naruko dashed off, leaving behind a small trail of dust of her own. She soon found Jiraiya sitting on a bench, catching her breath and looking a bit sheepish. "Naruko," Jiraiya said, brightening. "There you are. Just the person I needed." Naruko crossed her arms, though there was a playful glint in her eyes. "What happened this time, sensei? You looked like you were in quite a hurry." Jiraiya chuckled nervously. Let's just say I got a little too curious about some things and ended up confusing people instead. Naruko sighed, but her expression softened. You really should be more careful. People count on you to set a good example. Jiraiya nodded thoughtfully. You're right. And speaking of learning, I think it's time I taught you something important. Naruko tilted her head. Something important? Yes, Jiraiya said, smiling kindly this time. Not about silly misunderstandings, but about understanding people. Listening, being respectful, and knowing how to make others feel comfortable and happy. Those are the things that truly matter. Naruko's eyes widened slightly, then she smiled. That actually sounds useful. They walked together through the village as the sun began to set, the earlier chaos fading into a calm evening. Naruko listened carefully as Jiraiya spoke, not about confusing topics or strange ideas, but about kindness, friendship, and growing into someone others could trust. For once, Naruko didn't feel flustered or unsure. Instead, she felt warm and thoughtful, like she had learned something meaningful. And as they reached their destination, Naruko grinned brightly. Hey, sensei, she said, tomorrow, maybe you can teach me more like that. Jiraiya smiled back. Of course, Naruko. One lesson at a time. And with that, the two continued on their way, ready for whatever new adventures tomorrow might bring. The next day found Naruko at the library, sitting by a sunlit window with a stack of books nearly as tall as her. She brushed a strand of golden hair behind her ear and smiled at the quiet rustle of pages around her. Okay, she whispered to herself, time to learn properly. Her teacher had spent hours talking the night before, but Naruko felt there was so much more to understand, about people, about feelings, and about how to build kind and respectful relationships. So she and a few of her shadow clones carefully read books about the human body, emotions, communication, and friendship. She even picked up a few gentle romance stories, hoping they would help her understand how people cared for one another. I'll figure this out in my own way, she said with a determined nod. No shortcuts. Her clones grinned and nodded back, turning pages in perfect sync. 6 months later. The morning air shimmered over a calm stretch of water as Naruko and her teacher practiced together. It wasn't a real battle, more like a lively, fast-paced game of skill and focus. Naruko dashed forward, her feet skimming lightly across the surface. She laughed as her teacher sidestepped her approach. Too slow. He called. We'll see about that. She replied, her eyes sparkling. She moved with confidence now, combining what she had learned into smooth, flowing motions. A gust of wind sent small ripples dancing across the water, guiding her practice tools forward, not to harm, but to test timing and precision. Her teacher leapt aside with a grin. You've improved a lot. Naruko spun, landing lightly and pushing off again. She tried a new combination, blending wind and water in a creative way. A swirling shape rose from the surface, shimmering like a playful spirit before dissolving back into gentle waves. Whoa, she said, clearly pleased. Did you see that? I did, her teacher said, landing nearby. You're thinking more creatively now. That's important. They continued for a while, exchanging techniques and ideas, each moment filled with learning rather than competition. Finally, Naruko paused, catching her breath and smiling. That was fun. It always is, he replied. You're getting stronger, not just in skill, but in understanding. That evening, they sat beside a small campfire. The sky above was filled with quiet stars. Naruko poked at the fire thoughtfully. Sensei, can people who've gone down a different path find their way back? Her teacher considered her question carefully. Sometimes they can, he said gently. But it has to be their choice. You can guide someone, but you can't walk the path for them. Naruko nodded slowly. I see. She looked up at the stars, her expression calm but determined. Then I'll keep growing stronger, not just for others, but for myself too. Her teacher smiled. That's the right way to think. After dinner, Naruko stretched and stood up. Hey, sensei. Can we keep traveling and training a little longer? He raised an eyebrow. Oh? Want to learn even more? Of course, she said brightly. There's still so much out there to discover. He chuckled. All right. Let's keep going. Naruko beamed, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. The next day, Naruko sat at a small desk with a blank sheet of paper in front of her. I can't believe I agreed to this, she muttered, tapping the pen against her chin. Her teacher had somehow convinced her to write a book, her own story, filled with lessons, adventures, and everything she had learned along the way. Naruko stared at the page for a moment. Then smiled. Well, she said, straightening up, every great story has to start somewhere. And with that, she began to write. Flashback. Naruko and her teacher Jiraiya were arguing again. People passing by in the busy streets of Tsuki no Kuni, the land of fangs, slowed down just a little, curious about what could make the two so animated. Sensei, can you please just behave for one whole day? Naruko said, hands on her hips. You're supposed to be teaching me, not getting into trouble. Jiraiya scratched the back of his head, trying to look innocent. I was only observing human behavior for my writing. Naruko raised an eyebrow. Then maybe try observing kindness, courage, or friendship for a change. Those make better stories. Oh? Jiraiya said, suddenly interested. You think you can write something better than me? Naruko crossed her arms and smiled with confidence. I know I can. Jiraiya chuckled. Then let's make a bet. If your book sells more than mine, I'll focus completely on your training, and answer any question you have. Naruko's smile softened just a little. Then if I win, you'll tell me about my father. Jiraiya paused, then nodded. Deal. They shook hands, sealing the promise. Flashback end. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruko sat cross-legged near a quiet roadside inn, staring at a blank page. This is harder than I thought, she muttered. From behind her, Jiraiya's voice chimed in, teasing as always. Writer's block already? I thought you were going to beat me easily. Naruko huffed and closed her notebook. I just need better ideas. She stood up and walked away, determined not to let his teasing get to her. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Later that evening, Naruko sat at a small table, sipping a warm drink and watching the lanterns glow softly in the night. Travelers from many places filled the room, each with their own stories. Mind if I join you? A gentle voice asked. Naruko looked up and smiled. Not at all. The woman introduced herself as Aiko, a trader from Haru no Kuni, the land of spring. She spoke about her travels, the inventions from her homeland, and the joy of seeing new places. Naruko listened carefully, her blue eyes bright with curiosity. I like how you tell stories, Naruko said. You make everything sound alive. Aiko smiled. Stories are meant to be shared. They connect people. Naruko thought about that. They talked for a long time, about snow turning into spring, about inventions that made life easier, and about dreams for the future. When it was time to leave, Aiko seemed a little tired, so Naruko offered to walk her back to her inn. On the way, they encountered a group of rough-looking men blocking the road. Instead of rushing forward, Naruko calmly stepped in front of Aiko. Good evening, she said firmly. We're just passing through. Something in her steady voice and confident stance made the group hesitate. Naruko didn't raise a hand, she didn't need to. Her presence alone carried strength. After a moment, the men stepped aside, grumbling but unwilling to challenge her. Aiko let out a relieved breath. Thank you. Naruko smiled. Sometimes, staying calm is stronger than anything else. XXXXXXXXXXXX. At the inn, Aiko turned to her. You're not just strong, you're kind. That's rare. Naruko rubbed the back of her head shyly. I'm still learning. Aiko tilted her head. What are you writing about? Naruko paused. Then she looked up at the night sky, where the stars shimmered like tiny stories waiting to be told. I want to write about people, she said. About the moments that bring them together. About kindness, courage, and understanding. Aiko smiled warmly. That sounds like a story the world needs. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Later, sitting by herself again, Naruko opened her notebook. This time, the page didn't feel empty. She began to write, not about grand battles or clever tricks, but about small, meaningful moments. About helping someone when they needed it. About listening. About growing. And as her pen moved across the page, Naruko realized something important. The best stories weren't about being the strongest. They were about being the kindest version of yourself. She smiled. Maybe winning the bet would be nice. But telling a story that made people feel hopeful, that was even better. Naruko let out a soft groan as warm sunlight slipped through the window and brushed across her face. She blinked awake slowly, realizing she was in an unfamiliar room. For a brief moment, her heart fluttered with confusion, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. The last thing she remembered was walking her friend Aiko home after a long evening of talking and laughter. A gentle sigh drew her attention back. Something soft shifted against her shoulder, and when Naruko looked down, she saw Aiko resting peacefully beside her, her dark hair slightly tousled. The memory returned, not of anything overwhelming, but of a quiet night spent talking, sharing stories, and eventually falling asleep side by side, feeling safe and understood. Naruko smiled faintly, a warm blush touching her cheeks. It had been a comforting night, one filled with trust and kindness. Aiko stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Good morning, Naruko-chan," she murmured sleepily. "Good morning, Aiko-chan," Naruko replied gently, a little nervous but hopeful. Aiko smiled warmly. "I'm really glad you stayed." Naruko's shoulders relaxed. "Me too." The two shared a quiet laugh before starting their morning. Wanting to say thank you, Naruko got up and decided to prepare breakfast. Cooking had become something she truly loved, it made her feel calm and creative. Soon, the small room filled with the pleasant aroma of a simple but delicious meal. Aiko's eyes lit up as she took her first bite. "This is amazing." Naruko scratched the back of her head with a grin. "I'm glad you like it." After breakfast, Naruko thanked Aiko again for her kindness before heading back to her own place. When she returned, she found Jiraiya sprawled across the futon, surrounded by empty bottles and snoring loudly. Naruko shook her head with an amused sigh and quietly moved past him. She sat down with a stack of blank paper. Something inside her felt different, clearer, lighter. The peaceful night and meaningful conversation had sparked something new within her. With a small smile, she picked up a pen and began to write. Words flowed easily, as if they had been waiting all along. When the world feels lost and dim, a light will gently glow within, with wings of hope both bright and wide. She leads the way, a guiding guide. Naruko paused, reread her words, and smiled. 2 months later. "I can't believe this," Jiraiya muttered, eyes wide. "Believe it," Naruko Uzumaki said proudly, hands on her hips. Her book, Loveless, had been published just a week ago, and it had quickly become a favorite across many villages. Readers loved its message of hope, friendship, and finding light in difficult times. Jiraiya looked at the sales numbers again, completely stunned. No dramatic battles. No nonsense. Just a heartfelt story. "And it's winning?" Naruko grinned. "A deal's a deal, Uro-sensei." Grumbling, Jiraiya handed her a scroll. "This is from your father. I was told to give it to you when you were ready." Naruko blinked in surprise. Without hesitation, she opened it. As she read, her expression softened. Her eyes shimmered with emotion, not confusion, but something deeper. Understanding. Connection. Jiraiya watched quietly, unsure what to say. I think I need a moment," Naruko said softly, holding the letter close as she stepped away. Later, sitting by the window, she read it again. The letter was from Minato Namikaze, her father. He wrote with warmth and gentle humor, sharing stories of his life and how proud he was of her. He spoke of her mother, Kushina Uzumaki, and how much love surrounded her, even from afar. At the end, he wrote, "No matter where you go, remember, you carry our hopes, our dreams, and our love within you. And I believe you will bring light to the world in your own beautiful way." Naruko closed the letter, pressing it gently to her heart. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. She looked out at the sky, golden in the afternoon light, and smiled. "I'll do my best, Dad." Naruko pressed her lips together as she tried to stop the tears, but they slipped free anyway. They were not only sad tears, they shimmered with something warmer, too. She had just learned something that made her heart feel both full and heavy at the same time. Somewhere in the past, her father had thought of her. He had cared enough to leave something behind to protect her, something that whispered, "You are loved." That thought made her chest glow with quiet happiness. But there was another feeling, too, a soft ache she didn't quite understand. If he cared so much, why had she spent so many years feeling alone? He was always very careful when it came to you. Naruko turned and saw Jiraiya standing in the doorway. His usual playful smile was gone, replaced by a thoughtful expression. "What do you mean?" she asked, brushing her cheeks. Jiraiya stepped inside and sat down. "He made that for you as soon as he learned you were on the way. I remember how happy he and your mother were. It was like the whole world had brightened for them." Naruko looked down at her hands. "So, I'm just supposed to forget everything? Just because they were happy?" Her voice was quiet, but it trembled. Jiraiya sighed gently. No. You don't have to forget anything. Feelings don't work like that. For a moment, the room was still. Naruko took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. I wish things had been different. That's fair, Jiraiya said softly. But even if the past can't change, what you do next, that's entirely yours. Naruko thought about that. Slowly, a small smile appeared. Then I'll make things better, she said. For me. And for everyone else, too. Jiraiya chuckled, his usual warmth returning. That sounds like a future leader talking. Naruko laughed a little, the heaviness in her chest lifting. Crying hadn't solved everything, but it had made space for something new, determination. And what about my mom? She asked after a moment. Jiraiya smiled. She left something for you, too. You'll find it when you return home. Naruko nodded. Then I'll look forward to it. Jiraiya stood and stretched. Good. Because for now, we have training to do. Naruko jumped to her feet, energy returning to her step. Right. 3 months later. Naruko stood in a wide clearing, hands on her hips, looking proudly at the many shadow clones around her. They were busy with all sorts of tasks, some practicing control over gentle breezes and flowing water, others studying books spread across the grass, and a few quietly playing strategy games. She had discovered something important: learning didn't have to be just one thing. It could be many things at once. Some clones experimented with combining elements in creative ways, shaping frost-like patterns in the air or guiding soft currents of wind. Others practiced smooth, flowing movements with wooden practice swords, focusing not on strength, but on balance and grace. Naruko especially loved that part. She imagined her movements like a dance, sometimes calm like a quiet stream, sometimes quick like a playful gust of wind. Nearby, a few clones carefully sketched ideas into notebooks. New techniques, clever tools, even small inventions. Not all of them worked, some ideas fizzled out in harmless puffs, but Naruko didn't mind. Every mistake was just another step toward learning. She picked up her own notes and read them again. There was one technique she had been thinking about more than any other, a special ability once used by her father. It wasn't about strength or speed alone. It was about understanding space, movement, and timing in a clever, almost magical way. Naruko smiled to herself. I'm not there yet, she said quietly, but I will be. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, as if encouraging her. She looked at all her hard-working clones, then up at the bright sky. Her journey wasn't about proving anything to the past anymore. It was about building something beautiful for the future. Unfortunately for Naruko, her father had left very few notes on what exactly the Hiraishin was. The notes were vague, describing what the jutsu could do but offering little guidance on how it had been created. What she did understand was that, through the use of a special formula called a shiki and her father's famous tri-pronged kunai, Minato had been able to perform a space-time technique that allowed instant teleportation. Naruko believed the principle behind it might be similar to the summoning jutsu, since both seemed to involve bending space in some way. Still, her progress had been very small so far. With only a description and the marked kunai to guide her, she had started experimenting using a summoning array as a foundation. She sat cross-legged on the ground, carefully tracing symbols with focused determination. A gentle breeze rustled the trees around her, but she stayed completely absorbed in her work. Hey, Naruko, it's time to pack up. She looked up to see Jiraiya waving at her from a short distance away. Standing, she brushed the dust from her clothes and walked over to her sensei. We're leaving? She asked, tilting her head slightly. As she spoke, she created a shadow clone and dispelled it, sending a message to her other clones to wrap up their training. Yep. Jiraiya replied with a grin. It's been about a year, and I think the only thing you're really missing now is experience. Naruko blinked. So we're going somewhere I can get more experience? Jiraiya chuckled and shook his head. Not us. You. Naruko's eyes widened. Me? Where will you be? I've got some important work to take care of, he said. I've been assigned a mission to gather information about other hidden villages and learn more about certain groups out there. It'll be easier if I travel alone. He gave her a thoughtful look. You're a strong shinobi now, Naruko. But real growth comes from facing the world on your own. Naruko listened quietly, considering his words. She knew she had grown a lot, but there was still so much she didn't understand. This might be her chance to learn, not just about jutsu, but about people, places, and herself. So, where am I going? She asked, a spark of curiosity lighting up her eyes. Jiraiya handed her a scroll. You'll be heading to Kirigakure. There are some complicated things happening there, and your help has been requested. Everything you need to know is in that scroll. Naruko carefully opened it and read through the details, committing everything to memory. When she finished, she handed it back, and Jiraiya safely disposed of it. I'll check in on you from time to time, he said. But this is your journey now. Take it one step at a time, and trust yourself. Naruko smiled, her determination shining brightly. Don't worry, Uro-sensei. I'll do my best. As she looked ahead, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but more than anything, she felt ready. And that's a wrap. If you found this valuable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more. 6 Path Weeb.